Hello, Narnach here. Welcome to the theory crafting episode for my Duelist Lacerator build for Path of Exile 2.3 Prophecy League. It's gonna be a hardcore build, it's gonna be melee, it's gonna be I hope it's gonna be reasonably tanky. And what I've playtested so far using a level 40 duelist is that the skill Lacerate is actually a lot of fun to play with. So Lacerate was added with patch 2.3 and it's a melee skill that can only be used with axes and swords. It works best when you are dual wielding because it attacks once with your main hand and then it attacks with your offhand. And while Dual Strike only attacks just a single hit, Lacerate has a little bit of an element of Sunder built into it, or Reef, in that it attacks, it unleashes like a wave of energy, and it just goes in a straight line and it hits all the targets behind it. And it does a crosscut, so the target that's standing straight in front of you will get hit by both of your attacks, so your left hand and your right hand, but monsters further behind it will only get hit by one or the other. But it's reasonably effective at dealing with groups of monsters. Initially, I noticed people giving the range of the skill quite some flack, but playing with it, it's a lot of fun, and I don't get what the fuss is all about. Maybe if you compare it to like a reef with a Val Reef stacked on top, yeah, you're not going to cover the entire screen with it, but as just a normal skill, it's perfectly fine and it's a lot of fun to play. So, Lacerate. My initial plan was to go full on bleeding, because Lacerate, in a lot of games, it is associated heavily with inflicting bleeding. But the thing is, Lacerate is inherently an attack that will hit or will inflict multiple hits on the same target, especially in boss fights. You are going to hit that boss multiple times with the same attack. So if you're doing bleeding damage, that doesn't really make sense because bleeding doesn't stack, so you're wasting a lot of the bleeding attacks. So I took my focus a little bit off of bleeding. It's still in there, but I also want to add poison to it, because poison stacks infinitely. The more you hit something, the more stacks of poison they get, the faster they degenerate to death. So we're going to combine both of them. And in the Ascendancy, we're going to go with the Gladiator, which of course is the dual wielding version of the Duelist. It's the only reasonable option. And in a previous playthrough, I played a Facebreakers build that heavily focused on the defensive aspects, the dual wielding defensive aspect with spell block. This time, we're going to investigate the other side of the tree. So we're going to go for gratuitous violence first, which will actually give us bleeding, a 25% chance to cause bleeding with attacks. And then we do extra damage against bleeding, which is nice because it also means that all attacks will do more damage, and as such all the poison is going to do more damage. And as a cherry on top, bleeding enemies will explode and deal 10% of their maximum life as physical damage to their bodies. So it's just going to help us snowball into killing things even faster. Then we're going to get Outmatch and Outlast, which will get us frenzy charges and endurance charges for killing with our main hand and our offhand. And while either are maxed, we do more damage, or we take less damage or physical from enemies. So it's a nice bonus. This is only going to be the only way that we actually generate these charges for now. So it's going to be good. It's not going to be a strong focus, but it's going to be very nice to have this. And then on Merciless, we will grab Blood in the Eyes, which will cause us to do even more bleeding, take less damage from bleeding targets, and have a chance to inflict maim on targets, so they are less likely to run away. And we're going to stack even more damage on top. And if you ever get around to doing the Uber Lab, then Painforged is the only reasonable option, because there's nothing else that you can grab. But it's a good option anyway. It gives you more chance to block, or it will give you more damage if you haven't been hit recently. So this is a very nice, versatile skill. Might be that while playtesting we will drop something like Outmatch and Outlast to go for Painforged early and maybe grab a Versatile Combatant later on, because it is a nice skill. But for now I want to focus on the bleeding side of the tree and on these charges just to see what we can do with them. So with that, let's dive into the skill tree itself, and then after that we're going to go into a little bit of an overview of what I want to do with the build. So early on, very basic dual wielding setup. So we're going to grab the Armour and Evasion and life nodes, Master of the Arena, a little bit of early life regen and some strength and weapon range, mana flows just to fix our mana, bravery for life and defensive options, Art of the Gladiator, and then we're going to go for a Dervish. Get ourselves a little bit of extra blocking and extra physical damage while dual wielding. We are going to be dual wielding from the get-go, so it's really nice to grab this. So this is going to be, by the time you are doing Merveil, you are past this. So next step is to get Leech. Leech is pretty darn powerful, and the Mana Leech is probably going to sustain us for the rest of the game. This means you don't have to invest very heavily into mana regen, because you will just be generating mana by attacking things. The good thing about the Duelist Leech, both for the mana and for the physical and for the life, is that it works with all your attack damage. Doesn't matter what element it is. Most other forms of Leech are limited to physical Leech. This is all damage. So if you add fire damage or if you have some damage conversion, it doesn't matter. As long as it's an attack, it works. So that's pretty stellar. So this is going to be our next goal. That's going to be roughly around level 20 that we get this. So this is mid to late Act 2. Then we got our Leech, and then we are set up. Next up, we are going to invest a little bit more in Golem's Blood and a Cloth and Chain to get our defenses up. Very nice early source of elemental resistance. And then we're going to grab down a Blade Barrier and Ambidexterity down here to boost our damage and also to get some more additional blocking. At this point we will have 9% additional chance to block on top of the 15% chance to block you already get for dual wielding. So it's going to be 24% chance to block, which is on par with most shield builds. Good thing is we will have two weapons that we will be using for attacking, so we get everything on the top of that. So after that we are gonna head towards the Marauder side of the tree to grab some more life, to grab some intelligence, because this build it uses gems of all colors and it's pretty difficult to get intelligence, so Hard Knocks over here is a pretty nice way to grab it. Also I went out of my way to go past here to grab this intelligence node to get it as well. That's also one of the reasons why Mana Flows is in. It gives you 20 intelligence, which is pretty nice. So at this point you got almost 75 in Dex, Int, and you are good on Strength. If you compare this to early on, 40, 30, 40, you get some extra Dex, but the other stats stay low. So early on you're probably going to use an amulet to fix your attribute points. So I'm going to grab Bloodless over here, and I was thinking down here get Hematophagy, which just boosts our life leech even more. This is only physical damage, but it also boosts our maximum amount of life leeched, which I think will help us just sustain it, because we are doing so much damage, leeching so much, there is a chance of just hitting that cap on what you can leech. Boosting a bit further seems interesting to do. This is going to be one of those experiments in the build that I'll be running that might turn out to not actually do all that much, and then we'll just refund the points and spend them on something else. Also by this point we are now 48. That's going to be actually well into Act 2, or well into Cruel difficulty. Yeah, see, 34, that's a bit too early for the Labyrinth. But by 48 you will have done the Labyrinth and gotten Gratuitous Violence. So next up, 56, that's probably going to be late Cruel. So once you do the Labyrinth on Cruel, grab Outmatched and Outlast, see how that works. And after you have done the Labyrinth and you are actually gaining Frenzy Endurance charges, spend the 2 points here to get Vigor and spend 2 points here to get Savagery. Before that it doesn't make sense because you're not generating charges. Then with the rest of the points, complete this one just to get a bit of extra life, armor and evasion. And then make a beeline to the Marauder side, Warrior's Blood, Heart of the Warrior, and Versatility. Again, Dex, Intelligence, and some accuracy. I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of accuracy from the different nodes that boost the dual wielding. So you might not have to invest all that much in accuracy on your gear or into dedicated accuracy nodes. Okay, so at this point, 56, that's going to be late cruel. Next up, 74. So we are going to go towards the Cyan Life Wheel, grab Path of the Warrior, extra physical damage, which is always good. Some armor, some strength. Over here, Sentinel, that's more elemental resistance, evasion rating, and armor. There's a dual socket here that's probably going to be useful, and you go buy it, so that's good to get. The Marauder start, there's a nice beeline here with life and armor, and over here Diamond Skin for the elemental resistance is really, really efficient. Armor mastery up here, armor movement speed, and a life regen seems useful to get as well. And yeah, over here nothing really happens. 74, that's by this time you're probably running lower level maps. Well, you will be running lower level maps. No tier 2, tier 3, maybe tier 4. Depends a bit on how well you are geared. You might not have done Labyrinth yet, but you might, if you're gonna go for it, grab Blood in the Eyes, complete it. And then finally we branch out a little bit here. Grab Thick Skin. Over here you got Profane Chemistry, you got Reflexes, which is pretty useful. And I think that's it. So this is level 88. That means you got 12 more points to spare that you can just assign anywhere. The Ranger, you could beeline over here. Let's see. You got some dual wielding things here with some extra blocking. You got the evasion and life nodes over here. Heart of the Oak, it's life, it's some regen, it's pretty decent. There are different options. You could round out some of the other wheels that have only partially taken. Now the charges, if you want more duration, you can grab those. There's an extra dual socket. You can grab some extra stuff at the Marauder. There's another endurance charge over here. Regen per endurance charge. Juggernaut. And also grab the final point on here if you ever actually get around to doing the Uber Labyrinth. In terms of bandits, Oak all the way. I mean, the first one gives you life on normal difficulty. Then you get 16% increased physical damage, which is good, because that's what we're going to be focusing on very strongly, because both life leech, because bleeding and poison both scale off of physical damage. Poison also scales off of chaos damage, but as a duelist it's pretty difficult to scale your chaos, so we'll be focusing on our physical damage. Something that I have been considering is branching out into bloodletting and dirty techniques. I might still pick them up. There are some very efficient damage over time nodes and increased skill effect duration things on here. So no grabbing these ones, so this is going to be another 4 skill points, this is another 5 points, and if you grab these that's going to be 7, so there's 11 points in total. Might grab them at any point if we feel we need more damage with that. They're a very good way to scale your damage over time. This is 20%, this is 30% damage over time. Also extra attack damage against bleeding enemies, that's the same as what you get for Blood in the Eyes and Gratuitous Violence. This is 30%, this is another 30%. So here it's another 25%. And I don't think this one has extra damage against bleeding targets. No, but this is just more straight up physical damage over time. So this is all pretty... There's a lot of options here and I will be exploring all of them. But given that this is a melee build, I want to build some safety into it. So if you look at it now, the final, well, quote-unquote final build at 180 points. almost 200% increase maximum life, layered armor, evasion, there's blocking, there's leech, there's some life regen. No, there's various ways to keep yourselves alive. I plan to run with a cast when damage taken setup with Immortal Call and increased duration, so those endurance charges we gather every once in a while, they'll probably just get consumed by Immortal Call to keep that one up. But even without endurance charges, Immortal Call will still trigger for like half a second or a bit more with more increased duration. So that seems good enough as a way to keep yourselves alive. Then Vengeance, Curse on Hit with Enfeeble. That's something I want to experiment with instead of running Blasphemy Enfeeble. So Vengeance, it's a very nice area of effect. Curse on Hit, Enfeeble seems useful. If things hit us, we enfeeble them. And then for the next 6 or so seconds, they do less damage and have issues hitting us. So it means we're not going to be proactively enfeebling entire rooms. But it also means we're not going to be reserving 35% of our mana the entire time. Which seems useful. It's most of the builds end up just reserving most of their mana. We might convert into Blasphemy anyway if we decide that's more efficient. But for now, I think let's try something different for a change. So, I'm going to run Lacerate with basically the usual suspect. Melee physical damage, we are going to add Fortify to it, we're going to add Poison to it. That's going to be the basic 4 link for Lacerate. Then if you get a 5 or 6 link, we have faster attacks, we have added fire damage, we might even just try multi-strike. We'll see what works. For movement, Whirling Blades, linked with faster attacks, and Leap Slam. Whirling Blades is just going to be our regular movement skill, but keeping Leap Slam in there for a teleport jump, jumping over bridges, in the labyrinth, scaling height differences and jumping over traps seems useful, because Whirling Blades, you do get hit if you go through things, while Leap Slam doesn't have that. For golems, it's going to be a stone golem, of course. It's strength, dex, so we have to run with it. It will increase our life regen, which is something. We were a pure life-based build. We're not going to do energy shield, so we are fully going to benefit from it. It will just stack further on top of our means of recovery. Golem is going to get a Fortify, melee physical, and I'm going to experiment with running it with increased area of effect. See if it can aggro even more monsters, pull them together, so with Lacerate we have more monsters to hit. I want to see what the interactions are there with our Golem, or if it's just going to be a bother. We'll see that, and you'll discover when I do. I'm going to run Riposte this time, with melee splash, increased physical and life on hit, because we also have a lot of life leech and mana leech. Riposte is gonna do percentage-based life leech, and that's why I chose Riposte. Because Riposte out of the trigger skills has the most single target damage. So the thing that attacks us, we're gonna riposte back at it, and then melee splash will also affect everything around us for even more damage. Life on hit, it always generates a fixed amount of life, but the percentage-based life, it should start to scale rather quickly. And we're gonna run with Herald of Ash, which I've tried it a little bit, and it seems to work pretty fine. It's always nice seeing those pretty explosions for the fire effect, so that's gonna be good. And with that, we have a little bit of gear that we can talk about. I'll now be focusing on just rare items at first. There are probably useful uniques out there, but a quick glance didn't really make anything jump out at me. So for now, I'm not gonna use any uniques as a critical part of the build. If we run into something, that's gonna be fine. But until then, we're just gonna run rares. So we're just going to be running around in Armour Evasion gear, as is the Duelist native stuff. So for the rares there, we want to maximize the amount of armor and evasion we can get out of it. We want to maximize how much life we get out of that. Then we want to, actually I'm going to focus this time on increasing my chaos resistance as well. Most of the time I neglect chaos resistance. This time I'm trying to make an effort to push that along with the rest of the resistances. And then along with chaos resistance, we also want elemental resistances, of course. Because it is difficult at first to get all the stats we want, I'll probably run with some attributes on my gear as well. I hope I can fix everything with an amulet that will just boost our intelligence or whatever we need. Later on, we will get enough attributes from the skill tree to basically get all our skills maxed out. But early on, things might be constrained a bit because we are making this beeline for life leech and some damage. And there's not a lot of stop points in here, and especially intelligence is really hard to get early on. We're not going to get to hard knocks until, well, pretty late in the game. So we might run with that or from gear. And also if we have issues hitting things, we might have to get some accuracy from most of our gear. In terms of weapons, we're going to focus on physical damage. So flat physical damage, percentage-based physical damage, those are going to be the main focus. And if we manage to grab some other useful things, that's fine. But physical damage is the main focus. A bonus to skill gems might be useful, but Lacerate is going to be in our body armor because we want to at least 5 link it, maybe 6 link it. So we can't do that in weapons because when you do wielding, you can only get small weapons which have 3 sockets, and that's going to be pretty rubbish for main attacks. Anything else? Yeah, the belt also just follows the same rules as the rest of the gear. Life, some armor, some life from flasks maybe, and then some resistance, and that's it. Bandit's gonna be oak, and I think that's a pretty decent picture of what I'm currently thinking about for this build. So I hope you found this bit of theory crafting useful, and I hope to see you next episode when we start playing Prophecy Hardcore. It's been a while, so definitely going to enjoy that. So, see you next episode. Bye bye.